I'm sorry, but we've decided to revoke your acceptance. You're clearly not college material, Dean Margaret Foster announced coldly as 35-year-old Rebecca Torres sat in the admissions office at Westfield University. Other students waiting outside could hear every word as the dean publicly humiliated the former Air Force intelligence officer who had applied to study computer science. Rebecca clutched her acceptance letter with trembling hands, unaware that Professor David Chen was walking past the office and about to recognize the woman who had decoded enemy communications that saved his entire unit in Iraq 8 years ago. What happens next will completely restore your faith in justice and education. If you believe veterans deserve equal opportunities, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, have you ever been unfairly judged in an academic setting? Stay with us, because Rebecca's story will show you what happens when a hero gets the recognition she deserves. Rebecca Torres had dreamed of going to college since high school. The 35-year-old former Air Force intelligence specialist had spent her entire military career planning for the day when she could pursue higher education and build a new career in computer science. After 12 years of military service, Rebecca had finally saved enough money and completed all the prerequisite courses at community college. Her application to Westfield University had been accepted 6 months ago, and she was scheduled to start classes in the fall semester. But 3 weeks before classes began, Rebecca received an unexpected phone call from the admissions office asking her to come in for a meeting. Rebecca arrived at Westfield University that Tuesday morning feeling nervous but hopeful. She had brought all her paperwork, transcripts, and financial aid documents, assuming there might be some administrative issue that needed to be resolved. The admissions office was busy with students handling last-minute enrollment issues. Rebecca checked in with the receptionist and was told to wait for Dean Foster. After 45 minutes, Dean Foster finally called Rebecca into her office. She was a woman in her early 60s, impeccably dressed and carrying herself with the authority of someone who had spent decades in academic administration. Ms. Torres, please sit down, Dean Foster said without warmth or welcome. Rebecca sat in the chair across from the dean's desk, noticing that her acceptance file was open and spread across the desktop. I've been reviewing your application materials, Dean Foster began, and I have some serious concerns about your admission to our university. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. What kind of concerns? Well, for starters, your military background concerns me, Dean Foster replied. Veterans often struggle with the transition to civilian academic environments. You're used to taking orders, not thinking critically and independently. I think my military experience actually prepared me well for academic work, Rebecca said carefully. I worked in intelligence, which required analytical thinking and problem-solving skills. Dean Foster waved dismissively. Military intelligence isn't the same as academic study. We're looking for creative thinkers, not people who are trained to follow protocols. I'm willing to work hard, Rebecca replied. I've been studying independently for years to prepare for this program. That brings up another concern, Dean Foster continued. You've been out of school for decades. The technology field changes rapidly, and I'm not confident that someone with your background can keep up with current developments. My military experience was in intelligence and communications technology, Rebecca protested. I worked with advanced computer systems and encryption protocols. I think that experience is actually relevant to the program. Dean Foster made a note in Rebecca's file. Military experience isn't the same as academic study. We're looking for students who can handle theoretical concepts, not just practical applications. Rebecca felt like she was being attacked from every angle, but she tried to stay calm and professional. I've been accepted to the program based on my qualifications, she said. My test scores and transcripts met all your requirements. That's what I want to discuss, Dean Foster said, leaning back in her chair. After further review, we've decided that your acceptance was premature. The committee has concerns about your ability to succeed in our challenging program. The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. After years of planning and preparation, after being officially accepted, she was being told she wasn't good enough. Dean Foster continued her assault. Frankly, we think you'd be better served at a less demanding institution. Perhaps a trade school or community college program would be more appropriate for someone with your background and age. Rebecca felt her military composure starting to crack. I already have an associate degree from community college with high honors. I was accepted to this program based on my qualifications. You can't just change your mind because you've decided I'm too old. We can and we are, Dean Foster replied coldly. The university has the right to revoke acceptances when we determine that a student isn't a good fit for our programs. By now, Dean Foster's voice had gotten loud enough that other students in the waiting area could hear the conversation. Rebecca could see them looking through the open door, watching her get publicly humiliated. "This is age discrimination," Rebecca said, her voice getting stronger despite her emotional distress. "It's academic standards," Dean Foster shot back. "We have a responsibility to our other students to maintain the quality and reputation of our programs. Admitting students who aren't prepared for university-level work hurts everyone." The conversation was getting heated, and more people in the outer office were paying attention. Rebecca could see students, parents, and staff members watching the confrontation unfold. "You're making assumptions about my abilities based on my age," Rebecca said. "That's illegal discrimination." Dean Foster stood up behind her desk. "Ms. Torres, I'm going to ask you to leave now. Your acceptance has been revoked, and this discussion is over. Security will escort you out if necessary." Rebecca remained seated, her military training telling her not to back down from this fight. "I want to speak to someone above you," she demanded. "I want to file a formal complaint about this treatment." "You can file whatever complaints you want," Dean Foster replied. "But you're not going to be a student at this university. You're clearly not college material, and frankly, I don't think you understand the level of commitment required for higher education." The words, "not college material," echoed through the outer office, where a crowd had now gathered to watch the spectacle. Rebecca felt like she was being put on trial in front of strangers who were already judging her based on Dean Foster's public humiliation. That's when Professor David Chen walked past the admissions office. He had been on his way to a faculty meeting when he heard the raised voices coming from Dean Foster's office. As the head of the computer science department, he was naturally curious about admission disputes that might affect his program, but when he heard Rebecca's voice, something stirred in his memory. Professor Chen had served as a reserve officer in Iraq from 2014 to 2016, working with intelligence units on communication security. He remembered working with an Air Force specialist who had been instrumental in breaking enemy encryption codes and had saved countless lives with her work. He stepped closer to the office door and listened more carefully to the conversation. "I served my country for 12 years, Rebecca was saying, her voice strong despite her obvious distress. "I have extensive experience with computer systems, communications technology, and data analysis. I decoded enemy transmissions that prevented attacks and saved American lives." Professor Chen's eyes widened as he recognized not just the voice, but the specific accomplishments being described. He remembered the intelligence specialist who had worked around the clock to break a complex encryption code that had prevented a major attack on their base. "That's irrelevant to academic work," Dean Foster was saying dismissively. "Military experience doesn't translate to classroom success. Frankly, I'm concerned about having veterans in our program. They can be disruptive, they have anger issues, and they don't work well with younger students." The discrimination was now blatant and illegal. And Professor Chen had heard enough. He knocked on the office door and entered without waiting for permission. "Dean Foster." "I couldn't help but overhear this conversation," he said firmly. "As the head of the computer science department, I think I should be involved in any decisions about our students." Dean Foster looked annoyed at the interruption. "Professor Chen, this doesn't concern your department. This is an admissions matter." "Actually, it does concern my department," Professor Chen replied, looking directly at Rebecca. "Ms. Torres was accepted into the computer science program, which makes her my responsibility." Rebecca looked up at Professor Chen, hoping he might be an ally but not daring to expect too much. Professor Chen studied Rebecca's face carefully, and the recognition hit him like a lightning bolt. "Staff Sergeant Rebecca Torres," he said quietly. "Cryptographic Specialist, 15th Intelligence Squadron, Balad Air Base, Iraq." Rebecca stared at him in shock. "Yes, sir." "But how do you—" "Captain David Chen, Army Reserve, attached to the 25th Infantry Division, Professor Chen replied. You broke the encryption on the communications we intercepted in March 2016. The ones that revealed the planned attack on our convoy route. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears as the memory came flooding back. That was one of the most challenging codes she had ever worked on, requiring 3 days of continuous effort to break. You saved my life, and the lives of 23 other soldiers. Professor Chen continued, his voice getting emotional. Because of your work, we were able to change our route and avoid the IED that was waiting for us. Dean Foster was looking back and forth between them, clearly uncomfortable with this development. That's a very touching story, she said coldly, but it doesn't change the academic concerns I've raised. Professor Chen turned to face her with barely controlled anger. What academic concerns? Ms. Torres has excellent grades, high test scores, and real-world experience that's directly relevant to our program. She's a veteran, Dean Foster replied, as if that explained everything. They have problems adjusting to civilian life. They can be volatile and unpredictable. That's illegal discrimination, Professor Chen said firmly, and it's also completely wrong. Veterans bring valuable skills and perspectives to our programs. By now, the outer office had gone completely quiet. Students, parents, and staff members were all listening to the confrontation between the dean and the department head. Professor. Chen continued his defense of Rebecca. Ms. Torres spent 12 years working with the most advanced cryptographic and computer systems in the world. She has security clearances that most of our faculty don't have. She's exactly the kind of student we want in our program. Dean Foster was getting defensive. I have concerns about her ability to work with traditional college students. She's older. She comes from a military background. She might not fit in with our campus culture. She's 35 years old, Professor Chen shot back. That's hardly ancient, and her military background is an asset, not a liability. Rebecca tried to speak up. I just want the chance to prove myself academically. You already have proven yourself, Professor Chen said to her. What you accomplished in Iraq required advanced mathematical skills, logical reasoning, and creative problem-solving. Those are exactly the skills we're looking for in computer science students. Dean Foster made one last attempt to maintain her position. The decision has already been made. Her acceptance has been revoked. By whom? Professor Chen demanded. I'm the department head, and I wasn't consulted about this decision. You can't revoke a student's acceptance to my program without my input. The standoff between the dean and professor was attracting even more attention. Other faculty members had stopped by to see what was happening. Dr. Patricia Williams, the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, appeared in the doorway. What's going on here? She asked, looking at the crowd gathered around the admissions office. Dean. Foster tried to take control of the situation. Dr. Williams, we're just handling a routine admissions matter. It doesn't sound routine, Dr. Williams replied, stepping into the office. I could hear raised voices from down the hall. Professor Chen quickly explained the situation, describing Dean Foster's discrimination against Rebecca and her illegal revocation of an accepted student's admission. Dr. Williams listened carefully, then turned to Dean Foster. Is this true? Did you revoke this student's acceptance based on her veteran status? I revoked it based on academic concerns, Dean Foster replied defensively. What specific academic concerns? Dr. Williams asked. Her grades are excellent. Her test scores meet all requirements, and she's been officially accepted to the program. Dean Foster fumbled for an answer. She might not fit in with our student body. Because she's a veteran? Dr. Williams asked. Pointedly. The question hung in the air like an accusation. Everyone in the room knew the answer, but Dean Foster couldn't admit to illegal discrimination. Dr. Williams turned to Rebecca. Ms. Torres, I sincerely apologize for how you've been treated today. Your acceptance to Westfield University stands, and we'll be taking steps to ensure this never happens to another student. Thank you, Rebecca said, relief flooding through her voice. Dr. Williams wasn't finished. Dean Foster, I want to see you in my office immediately. Professor Chen, please work with Ms. Torres to ensure she has everything she needs for a successful start to the semester. As Dean Foster gathered her papers with obvious anger and embarrassment, Dr. Williams addressed the crowd that had gathered. Westfield, University is proud to welcome veterans to our campus, she announced. Their service to our country and their life experiences make our academic community stronger and more diverse. After Dean Foster left for her disciplinary meeting, Professor Chen sat down with Rebecca to discuss her upcoming coursework. I want you to know that what happened here today is not representative of how we treat students in the computer science department, he said. We value the unique perspectives that veterans bring to our programs. Thank you for standing up for me, Rebecca replied. I was beginning to think I'd made a mistake trying to go back to school. The only mistake was Dean Foster's, Professor Chen said firmly. You're going to do great in our program. I have no doubt about that. Over the following weeks, word of the incident spread throughout the university. Dean Foster received formal disciplinary action and was required to complete training on veteran, student services and anti-discrimination policies. Rebecca started her classes and quickly proved that Professor Chen's confidence in her was justified. Her military experience with complex systems and her disciplined approach to problem-solving made her one of the top students in the program. Other veterans on campus sought her out, grateful to see someone who had successfully fought against discrimination and won. She became an unofficial mentor and advocate for military students. Professor Chen often used Rebecca's story as an example when speaking to faculty about the value of diversity in academic settings. He emphasized how her military experience brought unique perspectives to classroom discussions and group projects. A year later, Rebecca was selected for a prestigious internship with a major technology company, partly based on her academic performance and partly based on her unique background in military intelligence and cybersecurity. During her graduation ceremony 2 years later, Rebecca was chosen as the student speaker for the computer science department. In her speech, she talked about the challenges veterans face in transitioning to civilian life and the importance of giving everyone a fair chance to succeed. Dr. Williams, who had become a strong advocate for veteran students, introduced Rebecca's speech by describing the discrimination she had faced during her admission process and how she had overcome it through determination and the support of allies like Professor Chen. Rebecca's speech ended with a message that resonated throughout the auditorium. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on foreign soil. Sometimes they're fought in admissions offices and classrooms by people who refuse to let others define their worth or limit their potential. As Rebecca walked across the stage to receive her diploma, Professor Chen stood and applauded longer than anyone else in the audience. He knew he was watching someone who had served her country with honor overseas and was now serving her community with excellence at home. The young woman who had been told she wasn't college material graduated summa cum laude and went on to a successful career in cybersecurity, where her military background and academic training combined to make her one of the most sought-after professionals in her field. Dean Foster's attempt to deny Rebecca her education had failed, but more importantly, Rebecca's success paved the way for other veterans who followed, ensuring they would face fewer barriers and more support in their pursuit of higher education.